In this video, I'm going to have a look at how we recode a variable. So I'm going to do this for age because I decided in the last video that I didn't want to treat it as continuous because there didn't seem to be a best way to look at it. And it might be helpful rather than considering age to be anywhere from 0 to, I can't remember what the maximum age was, 80, that it might be more helpful if we at least have children and adults. Because there was the saying that, or the assumption that women and children got off the Titanic first. Okay, so to recode a variable, we'll go to the transform option, and you can recode it into the same variable and it overwrites it. I don't recommend doing that because if you make a mistake, you've lost your original variable. So I am going to recode into a different variable. You can do several at once. So if you have a whole bunch of variables that you need to recode using the same rules, as it were, you can do a few of them together. The only thing that you have to do separately is the new name. You have to change it. So I'm just going to call this age. Let's call it age cat for categories. And if I had another variable in this list and I wanted to use the same coding, I could put the name in and change it and do it all at the same time. So then we need to put in the old and the new values. I'm going to use the range. So you could do discrete values. If these were categories and you wanted to recode them, you might go value to value. I'm going to use the range. So from the lowest value, which I guess is 0, through to, I'm trying to think about what would be sensible. Just to keep it simple, let's just look at children, let's say up to middle-aged adults and then older adults. We'll just keep it as 3 categories. So up to 18. And the new value can be 1. Then from 18.1, so just over, technically 18 is an adult, isn't it? So I think actually make that 17. And I can probably, the range I can actually do from 18, actually, now that I think about it, it's probably only the decimal points we used for children. So from 18 through to, now I'm just going to choose a cutoff, but normally if you're using age groups, you would use some predefined criteria that maps to whatever makes sense for your data. So whatever they use in the census or whatever they use in other literature, or if there's some kind of standardized survey that you're using. I'm just going to make this up because I don't really know what was appropriate for 100 years ago. That's the other thing. This is not today's data. So we might pick retirement age for the UK today. But I honestly don't know what would be appropriate for 100 years ago. Would 55 be old? Let's do up to 54 and then do 55, and that seems too young. Let's do 64, and then 65 and over can be old. So I'm going to call that 2. And then from 65 up to the highest, I'm going to call that 3. If we truly wanted to have an elderly category, then we might have to look up what's the definition of elderly, because I don't know if 65 is really elderly. So this is the type of thing where you do have to put a bit of thought into it, and you can, in your methods, you can add a little rationale for how you've categorized a variable. Now you have to remember what your codes were. If you can remember them in your head, that's great. I would write them down somewhere or take a snip so that I can put the codes in straight away. And you can also just do system missing to system missing, but it should do that. It should copy other values anyway. Okay, so now that we've got that age categories, let's put the values in. So I'll put that up on my other screen so I can see it, because I'll lose it every time I click into SPSS. So value 1 is 0 to 17. I should probably put years. Then value 2 is 18 to 64 years. And then value 3 is 65 and over. Now, I would recommend that you check that this has worked. You can, if you've got a very small data set, you can actually do this manually just looking at the data. So that's correct. If you can't see these here, you can toggle that with this button if you've just seen the codes. But the other thing that you can do is you could just do a graph of the two variables versus each other. So if I put the age categories here and the age here, and that looks correct, and I don't have some mysterious other category appearing or any other values. So I recommend checking it visually after you've done any recoding. And if you always retain your old variable, then you can do it again if you've messed up. So I'm going to keep the age and I'm going to move this one down to my not used pile.